Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Helena Blavatsky. This is The Secret Doctrine. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but some people seem to find enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. Of particular note again today is almost certainly going to be the Infinite Integrations playlist, where I teach people to do magic responsibly. With that being said, let us dive in and continue our exploration of the secret doctrine with a few early theosophical misconceptions concerning planets, rounds, and man. Now, this is continued from the previous section. Normally, it's a whole separate chapter. I don't understand exactly why this is formatted this way, but we're going to let it ride. Among the 11 stanzas omitted, let's go ahead and pop that footnote out. See the note which follows the commentary on the preceding page, and also the summary of the stanzas in the proem, page 22. We skipped that just because I didn't want to do the stanzas and then come back and do the stanzas again as we was going through, so it is what it is. All right. Among the 11 stanzas omitted, there is one which gives a full description of the formation of the planetary chains, one after another. That will be speculation. After the first cosmic and atomic differentiation had commenced in the primitive acosmism, it is idle to speak of laws arising when deity prepares to create. For A, laws, or rather law, is eternal and uncreated. See the 8 laws of creation. And B, that deity is law, and vice versa. No, deity creates the laws. Moreover, the one eternal law unfolds everything in the, to be, manifested nature of a sevenfold principle. Among the rest, the countless circular chains of worlds, composed of 7 globes, there are more than that, graduated on the 4 lower planes of the world of formation, the 3 others belonging to the archetypical universe. Out of these 7, only one, the lowest and most material of these globes, is within our plane or means of perception. The 6 others lying outside of it and being therefore invisible to the terrestrial eye. Every such chain of worlds is the progeny and creation of another, lower and dead chain. It's reincarnation, so to say. And again, I want to point out that anything before man was actually existent, it is pure speculation. Right? The scientists make their speculation, the Theosophists have their speculation, the religious people have their speculations. Everybody speculates on how creation happened. I don't, right? It would be great to know, but creation happened. That's all I really need to know. We are here on this plane voluntarily. We are here to learn lessons, and all of that is actually important. How exactly the planets were formed? Not that important. Whether or not there are 7 planes of some spiritual existence above and beyond ours, not really that important. So it's great to speculate. I have a lot of fun speculating. I have fun with conspiracy theories. I have fun with scientific speculation. I even have fun with mathematical speculation. But it's not that important in the long run. It really doesn't make a difference what happened prior to being here to you on a fundamental level. Now, you can have a different understanding of that, but that's my feelings on it. Nothing really matters prior to the existence of humanity, right? We can speculate on it, but there is no knowing that. To make it clearer, we are told of the planets, of which 7 only were held as sacred. That's because they could only see 7. As if they could have seen 8, it would have been 8. If they could have seen 14, it would have been 14. That's how it works, right? That doesn't mean that they're not there. There are obviously more planets than 7. And they use a little bit of funny math to get that 7, so that's fine too, right? The sun's kind of part of it, but it's not really part of it. And, we're not going to count the Earth, even though that's a planet, right? You can do funny things and make funny things happen. as being ruled by the highest regents or gods, and not all because the ancients knew nothing of the others. See, many more planets are enumerated in the secret books than in modern astronomical works. Well then, show us the secret books, right? And I'm of the firm opinion that there were civilizations prior to ours. That is an opinion. That is me speculating. We do not have the proof, even though there is several different pieces of circumstantial evidence. You see the 12,000 year disaster cycle for more on that. It is entirely possible that people had telescopes prior to us having telescopes. Just in the same way that once upon a time everybody knew that the earth was a sphere, and then everybody thought that the earth was flat, and then everybody knows that the earth is a sphere again, right? Those things move, right? Knowledge comes, knowledge goes. Sometimes we don't understand why. Sometimes it is a disaster that makes that happen. And so it is entirely possible that they knew of more, but they didn't record them, right? It is possible that they knew of more and the knowledge disappeared over time. That is perfectly fine. What I am saying is that the people who held that there was a God on these planets who ruled this particular realm could only see those particular planets. And that is why they said that. They couldn't see Uranus, right? And so, yeah. To each of these, whether known or unknown, each of these, whether known or unknown, is a septenary, as is the chain to which the earth belongs. See Esoteric Buddhism. For instance, all such planets as Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, etc., or our Earth, are as visible to us as our globe probably is to the inhabitants of the other planets, if any, because they are all on the same plane, while the superior fellow globes of these planets are on other planes quite outside that of our terrestrial senses. As their relative position is given further on, and also in the diagram appended to the comments on verse 7 of stanza 6, a few words of explanation is all that is needed at present. These invisible companions correspond curiously to that which we call the principles in man. These 7 are on the 3 material planes and 1 spiritual plane, answering to the through upadhis, material bases, and 1 spiritual vehicle, Vehan, of our 7 principles in the human division. If, for the sake of a clearer mental conception, we imagine the human principles to be arranged as in the following scheme, we shall obtain the annexed diagram of the correspondences. Alright, so we have a chart here. On the left-hand side it says human principles. On the right-hand side it says planetary division. It is a little bit hard to see some of this, but we have spirit at the top, soul, vehicles of spirit attached to that. Next down we have mind, and then animal soul, upadhi mind. Next up we have life and the astral body, upadhi of life, and the upadhi of, I cannot read that, physical body. And then on this side we don't really have an explanation except for D, our earth. Alright, so the footnote that is attached to spirit here is going to be, as we are proceeding here from the universals to particulars, instead of using the inductive or Aristotelian method, the numbers are reversed. Spirit is enumerated in the first instead of 7th, as is usually done, but in truth ought not to be done. Alright, and this footnote here at the bottom, I don't see where that is attached, but it's got to be in here somewhere. Or is usually named after the manner of esoteric Buddhism and others. 1. Atma. 2. Buddhi, or spiritual soul. 3. Manas, human soul. 4. Kamarupa, vehicle of the desires and passions. 5. Linga Sarira. 6. Prana. 7. Sathula Sarira. And this is probably going to, at least in some part, overlay the 7 internal human chakras. The dark horizontal line on the lower planes are the upadhis in one case, and the planes in the case of the planetary chain. Of course, as regards the human principles, the diagram does not place them quite in order, yet it shows the correspondence and analogy to which attention is now drawn. As the reader will see, it is a case of descent into matter, the adjustment, in both the mystic and physical senses, of the two, and their interblending for the great coming struggle of life that awaits both the entities. Entity may be thought a strange term to use in the case of a globe, but the ancient philosophers, who saw in the earth a huge animal, were wiser in their generation than our modern geologists are in theirs. And Pliny, who called the earth our kind nurse and mother, the the only element which is not inimical to man. Really? Really? Okay. Spoke more truly than Watts, who fancied that he saw in her footstool of God. The earth is only the footstool of man in his ascension to higher regions, the vestibule to glorious mansions through which a moving crowd forever press. But this only shows how admirably the occult philosophy fits everything in nature, and how much more logical are its tenets than the lifeless hypothetical speculations of physical science. Having learned thus much, the mystic will be better prepared to understand the occult teaching, though every formal student of modern science may, and probably will, regard it as preposterous nonsense. The student of occultism, however, holds that the theory at present under discussion is far more philosophical and probable than any other. It is more logical, at any rate, than the theory recently advanced which made of the moon the projection of a portion of our earth extruded when the latter was but a globe in fusion, a molten plastic mass, says the author of Modern Science and Modern Thought, Mr. Samuel Liang. The astronomical conclusions are theories based on data so uncertain that while in some cases they give results incredibly short, like that of 15 millions of years for the whole past process of formation of the solar system, in others they give results almost incredibly long, as in that which supposes the moon to have been thrown off when the earth was rotating in 3 hours, while the utmost actual retardation obtained from observation would require 600 millions of years to make it rotate in 23 hours instead of 24. And if the physicists persist, why should the chronology of the Hindus be laughed at as exaggerated? Here's one of those things that I speculate about. If you go back and watch the Ancient Lore playlist, we started off with the Enuma Elish, which appears to me to be a summary of how the universe was formed. But once again, it is speculation. It is entirely possible, if not probable, that the Earth was struck by a large solid object from outside of our solar system. By that I mean, it may be cometary, it may be planetary, it may be asteroid, but something large and solid struck the planet at a point in our history and possibly knocked a chunk off of our planet. That effect is possibly where the moon came from. The mass of the moon equates to a certain geological area in the in the globe that is not quite explained, right? I believe it's around the Gulf of Mexico. There's a big chunk of Earth missing where it should not be. It is possible that it was an asteroid impact. It is possible that it is not. It is possible that it is in a different location. It is possible that it never even happened. All of this is speculation. But if this particular theory is true, the Earth was struck by this Planet X or Nibiru or whatever you want to call it, and that formed our moon, right? The Earth-facing geosynchronous orbit that it is on is a little bit strange. That is not something entirely normal in existence, right? The fact that it rotates precisely with the Earth as it goes around us is a little bit weird, but it is possible that that happened then. It is also possible that the asteroid chain between us and one of our next solar bodies, right? That's what my very educated mother just, so Jupiter. Yeah, no, Mars. Yeah, Mars. The asteroid chain, right? The Kuiper Belt, I believe it's what it's called. It is possible that that is debris from that exact same impact. That is all I'm trying to get to, right? It is entirely possible that I am wrong. That is purely speculation because, once again, anything that happened before people were on the planet is always going to be speculation. If there was nobody here to observe it, there is no way to know for a fact. Your visions and my visions don't count. It is said that the planetary chains, having their days and their nights, in example, periods of activity or life, and of inertia or death, and behave in heaven as do men on earth. They generate their likes, get old, and become personally extinct, their spiritual principles only living in their progeny as a survival of themselves. Without attempting the very difficult task of giving out the whole process and all of its cosmic details, enough may be said to give it an approximate idea of it. When a planetary chain is in its last round, its globe 1, or A, before finally dying out, sends all its energy and principles into a neutral center of latent force, a Lea Centra, and thereby forms a new nucleus of undifferentiated substance or matter. An example, calls it into activity or gives it life. Suppose such a process to have taken place in the lunar planetary chain. Suppose again, for argument's sake, though Mr. Darwin's theory quoted below has lately been upset, even if the fact has not yet been ascertained by mathematical calculation, that the moon is far older than the earth. That is probably untrue. Imagine the 6 fellow globes of the moon, eons before the first globe of our 7 was evolved, just in the same position in relation to each other as the fellow globes of our chain occupy in regard to our earth now. See in Esoteric Buddhism, the constitution of man and the planetary chain. And now it will be easy to imagine further globe A from the lunar chain informing globe A of the terrestrial chain and dying. Globe B of the former sending out after that its energy into globe B of the new chain, then globe C of the lunar, creating its progeny sphere C of the terrene chain, then our moon, our satellite. Footnote. She is the satellite undeniably, but this does not invalidate the theory that she has given to the earth all but her corpse. For Darwin's theory to hold good, besides the hypothesis just upset, vide last footnote, other still more incongruous speculations had to be invented. The moon, it is said, has cooled nearly 6 times as rapidly as the earth, Winchell's World Life. The moon, if the earth is 14 million years old since its incrustation, is only 11 2/3 millions of years old since that stage, etc. And if our moon is but a splash from our earth, why can no similar inference be established for the moons of other planets? The astronomers do not know. Why should Venus and Mercury have no satellites? And by what, when they exist, were they formed? Because, we say, science has only one key, the key of matter, to open the mystery of nature withal, while occult philosophy has 7 keys and explains that which science fails to see. Mercury and Venus have no satellites, but they had parents, just as the earth had. Both are far older than the earth, and before the latter reaches her 7th round, her mother moon will have dissolved. Wow. Footnote continued, into thin air, as the moons of the other planets have, or have not, as the case may be. Since there are planets which have several moons, a mystery again, which no Oedipus of astronomy has solved. And there again we have something that she did not. More knowledge, right? There are a lot of reasons why satellites and planets can form, right? Now, I believe in the electromagnetic harmony of the existence, right? And I believe that perturbations in that electromagnetic harmony can create things. And then the best way to show that is I am drawing a blank. Cymatics, that's the word, cymatics. And we hit on that briefly yesterday. She understood that just a little bit, right? What is cymatics? Cymatics is sound shaping things. That is a paraphrase in many ways, but that is basically what it boils down to. If you take a metal plate and you set it on top of a speaker, right, and you pour sand onto that plate and you pass through the speaker various frequencies, the sand will form shapes. That is cymatics. The shapes that are formed by that are, in the most part, proof of the harmonics forming things. Is it forming spheres? No. Their sand is loose. It is free flowing. Water, same thing. You can do that with water too, right? It will form patterns in the water, but being dry, the sand just falls apart. It doesn't continue to accumulate into a complex shape. By that I mean with height, right? It gets width, it gets depth, but it gets no height. Until, if you did it with wet sand, it would take a lot more energy and a lot more problems. But the earth is not sand. The earth is not entirely water. The earth is comprised of a whole lot of elements all coming together, right? I believe that it is the harmonics of where we are in the universe that brought about the particular chemistry and shape and formation of this planet. And that farther out, we have some gaseous planets because those harmonics take less energy. The ones closer are more dense, and those take more energy. And so as we get farther out, we see less accumulation in the way that we see closer to. I believe that the sun is a conduit, and that conduit gives out these harmonics. And so the sun is the speaker. The plasma that is the universe would be the plate, and the planet would be the sand. The same goes for the satellites, right? If you can't form a planet out of gas and accumulate the solid materials that make up the satellites into that, then you're going to have them form separately, and they will revolve around this thing that is reverberating the harmonics back. That is, again, speculation. This is something that we do not know, but it is something that we can speculate on, and I have spent a good bit of time speculating on it. I have a video on cymatics, and I can't remember which one it is, but it is in the Infinite Integration playlist if you would like to see more about that. All right. Creating its progeny sphere C of the terrene chain, then the moon, our satellite, pouring forth into the lowest globe of our planetary ring, globe D, our Earth. That's the lowest. That's interesting. All its life, energy, and powers, and having transferred them to the new center, becoming virtually a dead planet, in which rotation has almost ceased since the birth of our globe. The moon is now the cold residual quantity, the shadow dragged after the new body into which her living powers and principles are transfused. She is now doomed for long ages to be ever pursuing the earth, to be attracted by and to attract her progeny. Constantly vampirized by her child, she revenges herself on it by soaking it through and through with the nefarious, invisible, and poisoned influence which emanates from the occult side of her nature. So you are saying, right, let's formulate this, right? She is saying that the moon was formed first, and then as it was dying, it gave up its spirit, and that spirit is where this earth was accumulated from. But it was already dying before this happened, and now it's pissed off that it was dying. And because it was pissed off that it was dying, it has a nefarious, invisible, and poisoned influence which emanates from the occult side of her nature. That's a little bit ridiculous for me, and I believe in magic, right? I believe in you being able to manipulate the electromagnetic forces of creation. That's a little bit wild to me, right? That the moon has vengeance for the earth. For she is a dead and yet a living body. The particles of her decaying corpse are full of active and destructive life, although the body which they had formed is soulless and lifeless. Therefore its emanations are at the same time beneficent and maleficent. This circumstance finding its parallel on earth in the fact that the grass and plants are nowhere more juicy and thriving than on the graves. While at the same time it is the graveyard or corpse emanations which kill. And like all the ghouls and vampires, the moon is the friend of the sorcerers and the foe of the unwary. From the archaic eons and later times of the witches of Thessaly down to some of the present tantrikas of Bengal, her nature and properties were known to every occultist, but have remained a closed book for physicists. I'm just going to state for the record here that I find all of that somewhat ridiculous. Such is the moon from the astronomical, geological, and physical standpoints. As to her metaphysical and psychic nature, it must remain an occult secret in this work, as it was in the volume on Esoteric Buddhism. Yeah, because you don't know. Notwithstanding the rather sanguine statement made therein on page 113, 5th edition, that there is not much mystery left now in the riddle of the eighth sphere. These are topics, indeed, on which the adepts are very reserved in their communications to uninitiated pupils, and since they have, moreover, never sanctioned nor permitted any published speculations upon them, the less said the better. Yet, without treading upon the forbidden ground of the eighth sphere, it may be useful to state some additional facts with regard to ex-monads of the lunar chain, the lunar ancestors, as they play a leading part in the coming anthropogenesis. This brings us directly to the septenary constitution of man, and as some discussion has arisen of late about the best classification to be adopted for the division of the microcosmic entity, two systems are now appended with a view to facilitate comparison. The subjoined short article is from the pen of Mr. T. Subbaro, a learned Vedantin scholar. He prefers the Brahmanical division of the Raja Yoga, and from the metaphysical point of view he is quite right. But, as it is a question of simple choice and expediency, we hold in this work to the time-honored classification of the Trans-Himalayan Arhat Esoteric School. The following table and its explanatory text are reprinted from the Theosophist of Madras, and they are contained in 5 years of Theosophy. Septenary division of different Indian systems. We give below a tabular form of the classifications adopted by the Buddhist and Vedantic teachers of the principles of man. Just trying to break it up. Classification in Esoteric Buddhism, Vedantic classification, classification in Takra Raja Yoga. Alright, now this is very difficult to read. Sathula Sarya, Prana, the vehicle of pranasya, Kama, mind is the 5th, volitions and feelings, etc. Vijnani, spiritual soul is 6, and Atma is 7. Anamaya Kosa, Pranamaya Kosa, Manomaya Kosa. I'm not going to try. You can come back. The original text is linked in the box down below, so you can come back and peruse this at your leisure. Yeah. I'm ready for the explanations. Let's see if there is... Did I miss footnotes? Or they're in here. So, Kosa is sheath, literally the sheath of every principle. So that is going to be every one of these is annotated with Kosa. Life, the astral body or Linga Surya, Sathula Upadi or basis of the principle, and Buddhi. From the foregoing table, it will be seen that the third principle in the Buddhist classification is not separately mentioned in the Vedantic division, as it is merely the vehicle of prana. It will also be seen that the fourth principle is included in the third kosa, sheath, as the same principle, but the vehicle of will power, which is but an energy of the mind. It must also be noticed that the Vijnanamaya kosa is considered to be distinct from the Manomaya kosa, as a division is made after death between the lower part of the mind, as it were, which has a closer affinity with the fourth principle than with the sixth, and its higher part, which attaches itself to the latter, and which is, in fact, the basis for the higher spiritual individuality of man. We may also here point out to our readers that the classification mentioned in the last column is, for all practical purposes, connected with Raja Yoga, the best and simplest. Though there are 7 principles in man, there are but 3 distinct upadhis, bases, in each of which his Atma may work independently of the rest. These 3 upadhis can be separated by an adept without killing himself. He cannot separate the 7 principles from each other, without destroying his constitution. And once again, I am going to state that I believe that that has more to do with what I say than what they say, right? We talk often about the 7 internal chakras and the 1 external chakra. There are 7 internal chakras: the base, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown. There are more. You have 1 in each of your hands. You have 1 in each of the base of your feet. There are others spread out through your body, but every single one of those is governed by one of the others. Your heart governs your hands, for instance. Your base governs your feet, for instance. They have purposes. They are there for a reason, but they're governed by other things. What I believe is being stated here is the division that I give to it, right? When we talk about the Trinity as I see it, is the body, the soul, and the spirit. But there is also another Trinity within the body, right? There is the 3 lower chakras, which is the base, the solar plexus, and the sacral. Not in that order. I don't know why I mixed it up. And then you have the upper, which is the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And then you have the heart in the middle. Well, the lower and the upper and the heart are 3, right? What they're saying here. You can separate the upper and do work. You can separate the lower and do work. You can go straight to the heart and do work. But you cannot separate the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus from each other at all. They are energetically dependent upon each other. They each govern something different, but there is interaction between them. If you have a gut feeling, I give this example all of the time. If you walk into a room, right, and you have a gut feeling, it's going to be one of 2. You're either going to have a gut feeling of, I am really supposed to be here. This is my person, for instance. You're extremely attracted to that person. Or it's going to be, I really do not belong here. I am extremely avertant to that person. That is a gut reaction, right? That is your solar plexus reacting to that, right? Your gut check. That is, if you're extremely attracted to that person and you think that that might be your mate, that is your solar plexus in conjunction with your sacral, because the solar plexus is nourishment and guidance, whereas your sacral is about generation and, things. And so that interaction between those 2 give you the gut reaction. If you have the aversion, that is going to be between your solar plexus and your base, basically. They all interact with each other, no matter if they are separated a little bit. There is energetic flow between them. There are other reactions that you have. If you I have to say this thing, that is going to be your throat chakra in conjunction with one of your others. If it is I can't say this thing, it's going to be the same thing. These interactions are integral to how you work. And while you can separate your base needs from your higher needs and still do work, you cannot separate the 7 from each other. You can, however, bring them into alignment with each other. And by bringing the 3, the as above, so below, into the heart, you can create reality. That is how manifestation happens. You bring it into your heart and you shoot it out into the divine, which is the all-encompassing aura or chakra that exists just outside of yourself. If you extend your hand with your palm up, that's the edge. It extends farther out from your hand, depending on how healthy you are, is how far it extends. Mine extends quite a ways. I haven't measured it, but I can see it, so I know what I'm talking. Some people it is very close. Some people it is very far. Some people it shines brightly. Some people it is a little bit dimmer. That has to do with your health, right? That has to do with physical health. That has to do with mental health. And it has to do with spiritual health. All of those brought into alignment, those 3 into 1 right there, that makes a difference. And so what I believe is at least intended by this is that. The 7 principles being these 7 chakras. Now, there are 7 virtues and 7 vices. We talk about this all the time too. You're supposed to find the balance, right? Each one of your chakras, depending upon where you are in the MBTI stack, governs a different point of interest, right? If it's SI, it's going to be organization. If it's TE, it's other people's thoughts. If it is all the way at the base and you have TE, you don't even care about other people's thoughts. You need to work on that. That is how you get healthier there. Or if you do care, you care for the wrong people's thoughts, right? There's a whole process that goes into that, but those overlay. Anger is generally going to be your base. Love is also generally going to be your base. Everybody thinks it's the heart, and that's not quite right. Anger and love is the base of existence. Anger is love unreturned. Anger and wrath, or however you want to call it. That is the coin for the base. For the sacral, it's going to be love and chastity. For the gut, it's going to be gluttony and temperance, right? Each one of these guides something different in the virtues and vices, and you're meant to find balance between these. And the way that you do that is by working on it and understanding where you are falling short. The MBTI system that I have completely changed literally helps you to learn how to do that, to identify in yourself which one of the things you're getting mad about, you're getting lustful about, so that you can work on it. Right? Everybody is different, but and even within the same types, right? Like, I am an INFJ. The point of focus for me is little boxes. I put everything into little boxes. My boxes and another INFJ's boxes are not going to be exactly the same. We may focus on different things, but we narrow it all down. We take all of the possibilities of the ideas and say that's the one that's most likely. Right? That is what my stack does. Somebody else's stack sees all of the possibilities and does nothing with them, but give them to me, right? There are different people who think in different ways, and even within the same type, people think of different ways because people are all here for their own lessons. Your lesson and my lesson may not be the same lesson. I think that explains that part well enough. And for more information on anything that I just said, if I lost you in the terminology there are several playlists, but Infinite Integrations will get you there. Start with Power of Perspective. It will help you. The student will now be better prepared to see that between the three upadis of the Raja Yoga and its Atma, and our three upadis, Atma, and the additional three divisions, there is in reality but very little difference. Moreover, as every adept in cis-Himalayan or trans-Himalayan India of the Patanjali, the Arya Sangha, or the Mahayana schools, has to become a Raja Yogi, he must, therefore, accept the Taraka Raja classification in principle and theory, whatever classification he resorts to for practical and occult purposes. That's why I'm glad I am free of all of that. Why I want to study all of them. I want to take the pieces that are relevant and discard those that are not. I don't subscribe to the clubs, right? I'm not going to try to become a Raja Yogi. I am doing my own thing over here, and we interlock, we overlap, but we are not the same. Thus, it matters very little whether one speaks of the three upadis with their three aspects, and Atma, the eternal and immortal synthesis, or calls them the seven principles. For the benefit of those who may not have read, or if they have, may not have clearly understood in theosophical writings, the doctrine of the septenary chains of worlds in the solar cosmos, the teaching is, briefly, thus. Everything in the metaphysical, as in the physical universe, is septenary. I disagree. It would be 8, not 7. Hence, every sidereal body, every planet, whether visible or invisible, is credited with 6 companion globes. See diagram number 3 after verse 6 of this commentary. The evolution of life proceeds on these 7 globes or bodies from the 1st to the 7th in 7 rounds or 7 cycles. And again, I'm going to say 8. And I have explained the 8 so many times, but it is including the all-encompassing divine, right? There are 7 days in a week, but Monday makes the new week, so it is included. That's a little extra, right? There are 7 colors in the spectrum, but there is also all of the colors combined into one, which is white, which is 8. There are so many different ways to show that there are actually 8 divisions of almost everything. And so, for me, it is going to be 8, not 7. 2. These globes are formed by a process which the occultists call the rebirth of planetary chains or rings. When the seventh and last round of one such ring has been entered upon, the highest of or first globe, A, followed by all the others down to the last, instead of entering upon a certain time of rest or obscuration, as in their previous rounds, begins to die out. The planetary dissolution, pralaya, is at hand, and its hour has struck. Each globe has to transfer its life energy to another planet. And the suppositions. See diagram 2, number 2, infra, the moon and the earth. Our earth, as the visible representatives of its invisible superior fellow globes, its lords or principals, see diagram number 1, has to live, as have the others, through 7 rounds. Again, speculation. During the first 3 it forms and it consolidates. During the 4th it settles and hardens, and during the last 3 it gradually returns to its first ethereal form. It is spiritualized, so to say. And the 8th would be the completion of that cycle. Its humanity develops fully only in the 4th. Our present round. Up to this 4th life cycle, it is referred to as humanity, only for the lack of a more appropriate term. Like the grub which becomes chrysalis and butterfly, man, or rather that which becomes man, passes through all the forms and kingdoms during the first round, and through all the human shapes during the 2 following rounds. Arrived on our earth at the commencement of the 4th in the present series of life cycles and races, man is the first form that appears thereon, having proceeded only by the mineral and vegetable kingdoms, and animal, and greater animal. This will be explained in Book 2. Even the latter having to develop and continue its further evolution through man, or animals. We already hit upon the theory of spiritual evolution, and I'm not going to do it again. You can fall back a couple of videos. It's literally the title or the thumbnail, one of the two. You can check it out. There are 8 divisions. Humanity is the 5th one. We are on the 5th plane of existence. This is 5D. We are in the 5th dimension. Not the 4th, not the 3rd, but the 5th. 4 reasons. Fall back and watch the other video. This will be explained in Book 2. During the 3 rounds to come, humanity, like the globe on which it lives, will be ever tending to reassume its primeval form, that of Dian-Kohanic host. Man tends to become a god, and then God, like every other atom in the universe. And I am going to absolutely elucidate this. You do not become a god. You are a thin, tiny, minuscule sliver of the divine. You are. Your soul, the part that resides inside of this 5D temple, it is immortal. It was somewhere prior to being incarnated in this flesh, and it will be somewhere when you are done with this flesh and it withers away. That part is immortal. It is a sliver of the divine, but it is not divinity in its whole. You will never be a god. Period. The end. If you can become more, you can do things that are a little bit beyond the normal. I do those things. I am not a god. I am not on the path to becoming a god. I am not desirous of becoming a god. That is way heady, right? And when I mean heady, I mean prideful, and pride cometh before the fall. There's a reason for that saying. Beginning so early as with the 2nd round, evolution proceeds already on quite a different plan. It is only during the 1st round that, heavenly, man becomes a human being on globe A, re-becomes a mineral, a plant, an animal. On globe B and C, etc. The process changes entirely from the 2nd round. But you have learned prudence, and I advise you to say nothing before the time for saying it has come. Extract from the teacher's letters on various topics. Every life cycle on globe D, our Earth, let's go ahead and pop out this footnote. We are not concerned with the other globes in this work except incidentally. Every life cycle on globe D is composed of 7 root races. They commence with the ethereal and end with the spiritual on the double line of physical and moral evolution. From the beginning of the terrestrial round to its close, one is a planetary round from globe A to globe G, the seventh, the other the globe round or the terrestrial. This is very well described in esoteric Buddhism and needs no further elucidation for the time being. Except we have not read esoteric Buddhism, and it may get on the list, right? But it's going to be after the Vedas. I'm going to go ahead and do the Vedas after this, unless there is somebody intervening, right? I'm beginning with Rig Veda. If there's a better way to begin, let me know in the comments below, because I want to do it in the correct order. As far as I understand, the Rig Veda is the oldest, probably even the oldest story that we have access to, so I want to read that. I just want to make sure that I do it in the correct order. So if there is a different order to read any of it in, or if I need to read something before the Vedas, let me know down below so that I do it correctly. The first brute race, an example, the first men on earth, irrespective of form, were the progeny of the celestial men, called rightly in Indian philosophy the lunar ancestors, or the Pitras, of which there are 7 classes or hierarchies. As all this will be sufficiently explained in the following sections and in Book 2, no more need to be said of it here. But the 2 works already mentioned, both of which treat of subjects from the occult doctrine, need particular notice. Esoteric Buddhism is too well known in theosophical circles and even to the outside world for it to be necessary to enter at length upon its merits here. It is an excellent book and has done still more excellent work, but this does not alter the fact that it contains some mistaken notions, and that it has led to many theosophists and lay readers to form an erroneous conception of the secret Eastern doctrines. Moreover, it seems, perhaps, a little too materialistic. That probably means that it is more correct than this one. Man, which came later, was an attempt to present the archaic doctrine from a more ideal standpoint, to translate some visions in and from the astral light, to render some teachings partly gathered from a master's thoughts, but unfortunately misunderstood. This work also speaks on the evolution of the early races of men on earth and contains some excellent pages of a philosophical character. But so far, it is only an interesting little mystical romance. It has failed in its mission because the conditions required for a correct translation of these visions were not present. Hence, the reader must not wonder if our volumes contradict these earlier descriptions in several particulars. Esoteric cosmogony in general, and the evolution of the human monad especially, differs so essentially in these 2 books and in other theosophical works written independently by beginners that it becomes impossible to proceed with the present work without special mention of these 2 earlier volumes, for both have a number of admirers, esoteric Buddhism especially. The time has arrived for the explanation of some matters in this direction. Mistakes have now to be checked by the original teachings and corrected. If one of the said works has too pronounced a bias towards materialistic science, the other is decidedly too idealistic and is, at times, fantastic. From the doctrine, rather incomprehensible to Western minds, which deals with the periodical obscurations and successive rounds of the globes along their circular chains, were born the first perplexities and misconceptions. One of such has reference to the 5th and even 6th rounders. Those who knew what a round was preceded and followed by a long pralaya, a pause of rest which created an impassable gulf between 2 rounds until the time came for a renewed cycle of life, could not understand the fallacy of talking about 5th and 6th rounders in our 4th round. You're assuming that it's the 4th round. Gautama Buddha, it was held, was a 6th rounder. Plato and some other great philosophers and minds, 5th rounders. How could it be? One master taught and affirmed that there were such 5th rounders even now on earth, and though understood to say that mankind was yet in the 4th round, in another place he seemed to say we were in the 5th. We are absolutely in the 5th. To this apocalyptic answer was returned by another teacher, and that is speculation on my part, right? I'm saying that through the things that I have said in other places, right? We're on the fifth dimension. That would be the fifth round to me, right? We went from the primal to the plant to the simple animal to the complicated animal and finally into humanity. That would be 5. To this, an apocalyptic answer was returned by another teacher. A few drops of rain do not make a monsoon, though they presage it. No, we are not in the 5th round, but 5th round men have been coming in for the last few thousand years. This was worse than the riddle of the Sphinx. Students of occultism subjected their brains to the wildest work of speculation. And again, right, this is all speculation, but it is because they are attempting to make something else fit into what they already believe. Now, I'm not doing that. I am trying to separate the things I already believe from the things that are being explained. And so, I believe that the divisions that I am making, like what I have done here with going from 7 to 8, fit. I could be wrong, but they seem to fit. They have been effective in my life. And so when I state these things, it is speculation for a great part. Most of it is based upon direct revelation to me, and so you can take it with a grain of salt. It is not going to hurt my feelings. Put it to the test. They didn't explain it according to this 10,000-year-old book, so it's obviously wrong. It doesn't work for me. Something can be recorded that is completely wrong. See Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy for that. For a considerable time, they tried to outvie Epidius and reconcile the two statements. And, as the masters kept as silent as the stony Sphinx herself, they were accused of inconsistency, contradiction, and discrepancies. But they were simply allowing the speculations to go on in order to teach a lesson which the Western mind sorely needs. In their conceit and arrogance, as in their habit of materializing every metaphysical conception and term without allowing any margin for Eastern metaphor and allegory. An Orientalist had made a jumble of the Hindu esoteric philosophy, and the Theosophists were now doing the same with regard to esoteric teachings. To this day, it is evident that the latter have utterly failed to understand the meaning of the term 5th and 6th rounders. But it is simply this. Every round brings about a new development and even an entire change in the mental, psychic, spiritual, and physical constitution of man. All these principles evoluting on an ever-ascending scale. That is why I say we are in the 5th. See again the spiritual evolution. Thence it follows that these persons, who, like Confucius and Plato, belonged cyclically, mentally, and spiritually to the higher planes of evolution, were in our 4th round as the average man will be in the 5th round, whose mankind is destined to find itself, on this scale of evolution, immensely higher than is our present humanity. I believe we are about to enter into the 6th round. Similarly, Gautama Buddha, wisdom incarnate, which will be a golden round, I see you, Jason, and was still higher and greater than all the men we have mentioned, who are called 5th rounders, while Buddha and Sankaracharya are termed 6th rounders allegorically. Thence, again, the concealed wisdom of the remark, pronounced at the time evasive, that a few drops of rain do not make the monsoon, though they presage it. And now, the truth of the remark made in Esoteric Buddhism by its author will be fully apparent. It is impossible, when the complicated facts of an entirely unfamiliar science are being presented to untrained minds for the first time, to put them forward with all their appropriate qualifications and abnormal developments. We must be content to take the broad rules first and deal with the exceptions afterwards, and especially in this case with study, in connection with which the traditional methods of teaching generally followed, aim at impressing every fresh idea on the memory by provoking the perplexity it at last relieves. As the author of the remark was himself, as he says, An untrained mind in occultism, his own inferences, and his better knowledge of modern astronomical speculations than of archaic doctrines led him quite naturally, and as unconsciously to himself, to commit a few mistakes of detail rather than of any broad rule. One such will now be noticed. It is a trifling one, still it is calculated to lead many a beginner into erroneous conceptions. But as the mistaken notions of the earlier editions were corrected in the annotations of the 5th edition, so the 6th may be revised and perfected. There were several reasons for such mistakes. 1. They were due to the necessity under which the teachers labored of giving what were considered as evasive answers, the questions being too persistently pressed to be left unnoticed, while on the other hand they could only be partially answered. 2. This position, notwithstanding the confession that half a loaf is better than no bread, was but too often misunderstood and hardly appreciated as it ought to have been. As a result thereof, gratuitous speculations were sometimes indulged in by the European late Kellas. Among such were a. the mystery of the 8th sphere in its relation to the moon, and b. the erroneous statement that 2 of the superior globes of the terrestrial chain were 2 of our well-known planets. Besides the Earth, there are only 2 other worlds of our chain which are visible, Mars and Mercury. Esoteric Buddhism, page 136. This was a great mistake, but the blame for it is to be attached as much to the vagueness and incompleteness of the master's answer as to the question of the learner itself, which was equally vague and indefinite. It was asked, what planets, of those known to ordinary science besides Mercury, belong to our system of worlds? Now, if by system of worlds our terrestrial chain or string was intended in the mind of the querist instead of the solar system of worlds, as it should have been, then of course the answer was likely to be misunderstood, for the reply was Mars, etc., and 4 other planets of which astronomy knows nothing. Neither A, B, nor Y, Z are known, nor can they be seen through physical means, however perfected. This is plain. A. Astronomy as yet knows nothing in reality of the planets, neither the ancient ones, nor those discovered in modern times. B. No companion planets from A to Z, in example, no upper globes of any chain in the solar system can be seen. Footnote. With the exception, of course, of all the planets which come forth in number, as are Earth, the Moon, etc., etc. Copies of all the letters ever received or sent, with the exception of a few private ones, in which there was no teaching, the master says, are with the writer. As it was her duty, in the beginning, to answer and explain certain points not touched upon, it is more than likely that, notwithstanding the many annotations on these copies, the writer, in her ignorance of English and her fear of saying too much, may have bungled the information given. She takes the whole blame for it upon herself in any and every case. But it is impossible for her to allow students to remain any longer under erroneous impressions or to believe that the fault lies with the esoteric system. I feel much the same way. I'm no longer allowing people to do this incorrectly. If you see me, I am attempting to show you how at least it works for me. As to Mars, Mercury, and the 4 other planets, they bear a relation to Earth of which no master or high occultist will ever speak, much less explain the nature. Footnote. In this same letter, the impossibility is distinctly stated. Try to understand that you are putting me questions pertaining to the highest initiation, that I can give you only a general view, but that I dare not nor will I enter upon details, wrote one of the teachers to the author of Esoteric Buddhism. Let it now be distinctly stated then that the theory broached is impossible, or without the additional evidence furnished by modern astronomy. Physical science can supply corroborative, though still very uncertain, evidence, but only as regards heavenly bodies on the same plane of materiality as our objective universe. Mars and Mercury, Venus and Jupiter, like every hitherto discovered planet, or those still to be discovered, are all, per se, the representatives on our plane of such chains. As distinctly stated in one of the numerous letters of Mr. Sennett's teacher, there are other and innumerable manvanteric chains of globes which bear intelligent beings both in and outside our solar system. But neither Mars nor Mercury belong to our chain. They are, along with the other planets, septenary units in the great host of chains of our system, and all are as visible as their upper globes are invisible. And again, I do not hold to the invisible planets, chains, or anything of that nature. It is possible, but I have zero experience with it or evidence of it, despite seeking that. And I understand the allegory. I understand that they were trying to explain something, but as an allegory, things can work, but not practically in reality, right? And again, practical and reality being subjective terms. If it is still argued that certain expressions in the teacher's letters were liable to mislead, the answer comes. Amen. So it was. The author of Esoteric Buddhism understood it well when he wrote that such are the traditional modes of teaching by provoking the perplexity. They do or do not relieve, as the case may be. At all events, it is urged that this might have been explained earlier, and the true nature of the planets given out as they are now. The answer comes that it was not found expedient to do so at the time, as it would have opened the way to a series of additional questions which could never be answered on account of their esoteric nature, and thus would only become embarrassing. It had been declared from the first, and has been repeatedly asserted since that first, no theosophist, not even as an accepted Kala, let alone lay students, could expect to have the secret teachings explained to him thoroughly and completely before he had irretrievably pledged himself to the Brotherhood and passed through at least one initiation, because no figures and numbers could be given to the public, for figures and numbers are the key to the esoteric system. 2. That what was revealed was merely the esoteric lining of that which was contained in almost all the exoteric scriptures of the world religions, preeminently in the Brahmanas and the Upanishads of the Vedas, and even in the Puranas. It was a small portion of what is divulged far more fully now in the present volumes, and even this is very incomplete and fragmentary. When the present work was commenced, the writer, feeling sure that the speculation about Mars and Mercury was a mistake, applied to the teachers by letter for the explanation and an authoritative version. Both came in due time, and verbatim extracts from these are now given. It is quite correct that Mars is in a state of obscuration at present, and Mercury just beginning to get out of it. You might add that Venus is in her last round. If neither Mercury nor Venus have satellites, it is because of the reasons, vide footnote supra, where those reasons are given, and also because Mars has 2 satellites to which he has no right. Phobos, the supposed inner satellite, is no satellite at all. As remarked long ago by Laplace and now by Fay, see Comte Surrender's tome, Phobos keeps a too short periodic time, and therefore there must exist some defect in the mother idea of that theory, as Fay justly observes. Again, both Mars and Mercury are septenary chains, as independent of the Earth's sidereal lords and superiors, as you are independent of the principles of Dom Ling, Tom Thung, which were perhaps his 6 brothers, with or without nightcaps. Gratification of curiosity is the end of knowledge for some men, was said by Bacon, who was right in postulating this truism, as those who were familiar with it before him were right in hedging off wisdom from knowledge, and tracing limits to that which are to be given out at one time. Remember, knowledge dwells in heads replete with thoughts of other men, wisdom in minds attentive to their own. Knowledge being here synonymous with intelligence, which is the capacity to learn, wisdom is the practical application of that. You can never impress too profoundly on the minds of those to whom you impart some of the esoteric teachings. Again, here are more extracts from another letter, written by the same authority. This time it is an answer to some objections laid before the teachers. They are based upon extremely scientific, and as futile, reasonings about the advisability of trying to reconcile the esoteric theories with the speculations of modern science, and were written by a young theosophist as a warning against the secret doctrine, and in reference to the same subject. He had declared that if there were such companion Earths, they must be only a wee bit less material than our globe. How then was it that they could not be seen? The answer was, were psychic and spiritual teachings more fully understood, it would become next to impossible to even imagine such an incongruity, unless less trouble is taken to reconcile the irreconcilable. That is to say, the metaphysical and spiritual sciences with physical or natural philosophy, natural being a synonym to them, men of science, of that matter which falls under the perception of their corporeal senses. No progress can really be achieved. Our globe, as taught from the first, is at the bottom of the arc of descent, where the matter of our perceptions exhibits itself in its grossest form. Hence it only stands to reason that the globes which overshadow our earth must be on different and superior planes. In short, as globes, they are in coadunition, but not in co-substantiality with our earth, and thus pertain to quite another state of consciousness. Our planet, like all those we see, is adapted to the peculiar state of its human stock, that state which enables us to see with our naked eye the sidereal bodies which are co-essential with our terrene plane and substance, just as with their respective inhabitants, the Jovians, Martians, and others can perceive our little world. Because our planes of consciousness, differing as they do in degree, but being the same in kind, are on the same layer of differentiated matter. What I wrote was, the minor pralaya concerns only our little strings of globes. We called chains strings in those days of lip confusion. To such a string our earth belongs. This ought to have shown plainly that the other planets were also strings or chains. If he, meaning the objector, would perceive even the dim silhouette of one such planet on the higher planes, he has to first throw off even the thin cloud of the astral matter that stands between him and the next plane. It becomes patent why we could not perceive, even with the help of those of the best earthly telescopes, that which is outside our world of matter. Those alone, whom we call adepts, who know how to direct their mental vision and transfer their consciousness, physical and psychic both, to other planes of being, are able to speak with authority on such subjects, and they tell us plainly, lead the life necessary for the acquisition of such knowledge and powers, and wisdom will come to you naturally. Whenever you are able to attune your consciousness to any of the 7 chords of the universal consciousness, those chords that run along the sounding board of cosmos, vibrating from one eternity to another, when you have studied thoroughly the music of the spheres, then only will you become quite free to share your knowledge with those with whom it is safe to do so. Meanwhile, be prudent. Do not give out the great truths that are the inheritance of the future races to our present generation. Do not attempt to unveil the secret of being and non-being to those unable to see the hidden meaning of Apollo's heptachord, the lyre of the radiant god, in each of the 7 strings of which dwelleth the spirit, soul, and astral body of the cosmos, whose shell only has now fallen into the hands of modern science. Be prudent, we say, prudent and wise, and above all, take care what those who learn from you believe in, lest, by deceiving themselves, they deceive others. For such is the fate of every truth with which men are, as yet, unfamiliar. Let rather the planetary chains and other super and subcosmic mysteries remain a dreamland for those who can neither see nor yet believe that others can. It is to be regretted that few of us have followed the wise advice, and that many a priceless pearl, many a jewel of wisdom, has been cast to an enemy unable to understand its value, and who has turned around and rent us. Let us imagine, wrote the same master to his two late Kalas, that he called the author of Esoteric Buddhism and another gentleman, his co-student for a time. Let us imagine that our Earth is one of a group of 7 planets or man-bearing worlds. The 7 planets are the sacred planets of antiquity and are all septenary. Now, the life impulse reaches A, or rather that which is destined to become A, and which so far is but cosmic dust, a Laya center, etc. In these early letters, in which the terms had to be invented and words coined, the rings very often became rounds, and the rounds life cycles, and vice versa. To a correspondent who called a round a world ring, the teacher wrote, "I believe this will lead to further confusion. A round we are agreed to call the passage of a monad from globe A to globe G or Z. The world ring is correct. Advise Mr. Blank strongly to agree upon a nomenclature before going any further." Notwithstanding this agreement, many mistakes, owing to this confusion, crept into the earliest teachings. The races were occasionally mixed up with the rounds and rings, and led to similar mistakes in man. From the first, the master had written, "Not being permitted to give you the whole truth or divulge the number of isolated fractions, I am unable to satisfy you." This, in answer to the question, if we are right, then the total existence prior to the man period is 637, etc., etc. To all the queries relating to figures, the reply was, "Try to solve the problem of 777 incarnations. Though I am obliged to withhold information, yet if you should work out the problem by yourself, it will be my duty to tell you so." But they were never so worked out, and the results were never-ceasing perplexity and mistakes. Even the teaching about the septenary constitution of the sidereal bodies and of the macrocosm, from which the septenary division of the microcosm, or man, has until now been among the most esoteric. In olden times it used to be divulged only at the initiation and along with the most sacred figures of the cycles. Now, as stated in one of the Theosophical journals, footnote, Lucifer, May 1888, the revelation of the whole system of cosmogony had not been contemplated, nor even thought for one moment possible, at a time when a few bits of information were sparingly given out in answer to letters written by the author of Esoteric Buddhism, in which he put forward a multiplicity of questions. Among these were questions on such problems as no master, however high and independent he might be, would have the right to answer, thus divulging to the world the most time-honored and archaic of the mysteries of the ancient college temples. I am trying to do so, as best as I can. I am not a master, I am an adept, but anything that I learn, you will too. And with the caveat being that if you are slogging through my videos, you are actually searching for the truth, you are putting in the work, you are attempting at least to come to the understanding, and so I am going to give the information as freely, clearly, and as completely as possible. Hence, only a few of the doctrines were revealed in their broad outlines, while details were constantly withheld, and all the efforts made to elicit more information about them were systemically eluded from the beginning. This is perfectly natural. Of the 4 vidyas out of the 7 branches of knowledge mentioned in the Puranas, namely Yajna Vidya, the performance of religious rites in order to produce certain results; Maha Vidya, the great magic knowledge, now degenerated into Tantrika worship; Guhya Vidya, the science of mantras and their true rhythm or chanting, of mystical incantations, etc. It is only the last one, Atma Vidya, or the true spiritual and divine wisdom, which can throw absolute and final light upon the teachings of the first three named. Without the help of Atma Vidya, the other three remain no better than surface sciences, geometrical magnitudes having length and breadth but no thickness. So, religious rites would be ceremonies, right? The great magic would be the things that I am trying to teach, and the rhythm and chanting is something that I don't, right? There is power in words, absolute truth. There is power in the intention behind words that act as a magnifier, absolute truth. But I am unclear on exactly what, when, and how the physical effects of the mantras actually work, so I am only just beginning to play with that type of thing, right? Everything that I have done has been outside of any participation in any form of mantras or mudras, right? I don't have to put my fingers into specific instances, or I don't even know them, right? I don't have to say om or ayam or any of those things. I do internal reflective work, and I am able to do the great magical part of this. And so it is possible that there are mantras and mudras that are important. I just have not learned them, and I try not to play with forces beyond my ken, right? So I don't step outside of the bounds of what knowledge I am seeking. So I'm not going to, unless I am informed on specifics of mudras and mantras, I'm probably not going to participate in them in a great manner. Now, it is entirely possible that I will come across some information which will allow me to do so in a manner in which I am comfortable, and if so, you will learn about that just as much as you learn about the other things. So, I just wanted to point that out. They are like the soul, limbs, and mind of a sleeping man, capable of mechanical motions, of chaotic dreams, and even sleepwalking, of producing, and the last one, the Atma Vidya, the true spiritual and divine wisdom, I believe that I am relaying that, right? I believe that the 8 is integral to that, the external chakra being part of that, the electromagnetic manipulations that I talk about, I believe that as part of the spiritual and divine wisdom, which allows the power to happen to the magic part. Capable of mechanical motions, of chaotic dreams, and even sleepwalking, of producing visible effects, but stimulated by instinctual, not intellectual causes, least of all by fully conscious spiritual impulses. A good deal can be given out and explained from the 3 first named sciences, but unless the key to their teachings is furnished by Atma Vidya, they will remain forever like fragments of a mangled textbook, like the adumbrations of great truth, dimly perceived by most spiritual, but distorted out of all proportion by those who would nail every shadow to the wall. Then, again, another great perplexity was created in the minds of students by the incomplete exposition of the doctrine of the evolution of the monads. To be fully realized, both this process and that of the birth of the globes must be examined far more from their metaphysical aspect than from what one might call a statistical standpoint, involving figures and numbers, which are rarely permitted to be broadly used. Unfortunately, there are few who are inclined to handle these doctrines only metaphysically. Even the best of the Western writers upon our doctrine declares in his work that on pure metaphysics of that sort we are not now engaged, when speaking of the evolution of the monads. Esoteric Buddhism, page 46. And in such cases, as the teacher remarks in a letter to him, why this preaching of our doctrines, all this uphill work and swimming in adversum flumen? Why should the West learn from the East that which can never meet the requirements of the special taste of the ascetics? And he draws his correspondent's attention to the formidable difficulties encountered by us, the adepts, in every attempt we make to explain our metaphysics to the Western mind. And well he may. For outside of metaphysics, no occult philosophy, no esotericism is possible. It is like trying to explain the aspirations and affections, the love and hatred, the most private and sacred workings in the soul and mind of living man by an anatomical description of the chest and brain of his dead body. Let us now examine two tenets mentioned above and hardly alluded to in the esoteric Buddhism, and supplement them as far as lies in our power. Now it says this page is continued in the next section. We will do another video on that, and that is going to bring us to the conclusion of Theosophical Misconceptions. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something I apologize for. I am here to try to elucidate. I am casting pearls. Whether or not you pick them up, that's up to you. Some people have already. Some people are already picking out the pearls that I have thrown and have affected change in their life with those pearls. And so I'm going to continue casting them out. I'm going to continue trying to clarify as much as I possibly can of my experience with these forces. I have affected change in my life through what I am talking about. On a physical level, on a emotional level, on a spiritual level, I have seen growth. Not just a little bit of growth, but fulfillment of impossibilities. And so I am endeavoring to give to you the things which I have worked for, right? I am freely giving away any bit of knowledge that I attain. The purpose of these studies is to try and keep it in a order so that I can confirm or repudiate anything with which I have experience. There are a lot of things that are speculation in esoterica, right? There are things that are probably provable. There are things that will never be provable. I cannot prove to you a vision. Never going to happen. But there might be some experiment that I am unaware of, or that is soon to come, or whatever, that can show that I actually do manipulate the electromagnetic forces, that I have affected change and healing in my life. Those are things that are possible, right? There are things that are impossible. It is impossible, not possible, completely not within the realm of possibility, that anybody can tell you with certainty how the planet was formed. Scientists can't do it. Esotericists can't do it. Nobody can do it. You can have theories, you can have speculations, but proof requires hard evidence. There has to be some witnessed, observable event happening. Now, the closest that we get to that is the electric universe theory. The guys over at the Thunderbolt Project have literally conducted an experiment that shows how the possibility of the solar system forming, if not the universe, at least the solar system forming from plasma. That is something that we can take as a informed speculation, right? Because even though we have recreated in a lab the conditions and output that we would expect to see from the experiment, we cannot date that back, right? We can't say, well, this is absolutely how the earth was formed. Many of the things that are speculated about in this could be. There is entirely possible that there is another realm of spiritual existence that is visible if you cross a certain plane. I have never crossed that plane, right? I have seen the earth be formed. I did. That was a spiritual experience, so I can't give that to you. I can relay it. I can't give it to you. There's a difference. I can tell you that I had the experience. I can tell you what I saw during the experience. Not even in great detail, though, right? I was pulled out of my body. I was into the formless plasma that it makes up our universe. And I saw, right? It is impossible for me to imagine it. I was awake. I was aware of my body, but I was not in it. And I saw the formation of the universe. I saw it literally spin out. I saw the interconnectedness on the planet through a scoping in, right? I started out, I was way out here. And then we scoped in on the earth, and I saw the interconnectedness between my breath and your breath. Like, I literally saw it. And so, for me, it is a lot firmer than it will be for you. If you have not had that experience, you're not going to feel the same way. I'm here to relay experiences, not convince you of them. I'm here to tell you things, not beat you over the head and change your opinions. If you disagree with me, that is perfectly fine. If you agree with Mrs. Blavatsky, perfectly fine. If you completely discard both of us, perfectly fine. All of that is speculative, right? I can relate to you my experience. I cannot give it to you. And so I don't even try. I'm here to tell you things, not convince you of them. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that was said here. As long as it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me discuss in the manner that we are doing here, drop that in the comments as well. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. To the crew.
Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you were here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take.
Peace.